We're almost to the finish line. Day two of the 2025 NFL Draft is in the books. And, as much attention as the first night gets and all the biggest names, it's really when you get to day two and day three that's not only the most interesting for the hardcorest of draft fans, but this is where your championship teams are really made. So it's no question about it. These rounds really matter. And we certainly had an interesting Friday night. So I'm here to talk about the winners and losers from day two of the 2025 NFL Draft. Starting off with the winners. These are in no particular order, mind you. I'm going to go with the Carolina Panthers. I thought they got a great blend of need and value on day two. They weren't afraid to move up a little bit to get their guys, but the way they did it was sensible, kept any of that damage of draft pick capital cost contained to the 2025 draft. Nick Scourton, I thought was a better edge prospect than Shadour Sanders and by a bit, frankly. And for a Panthers team that really badly needed to address their defense, I thought this was a wonderful pick for them at number 51. And then to turn around in round three, pick 77, and be able to get Milen, the edge rusher from Ole Miss, I felt like a steal because this is a guy you were talking about for a while. Maybe he was a late first round pick or an early to mid second round pick, and instead the Panthers were able to get him in the middle of round three. As much as I think about it, when you go into the draft at days two, days three, it's about value, upside, a bunch of different things. But when you can get this type of value, you got to give props, and they certainly deserve it for what they did. They doubled up on the edge rushers, and I thought they got two pretty good ones relative to their draft position. The Dallas Cowboys, sometimes there's value in just staying put and letting the board fall to you and take best player available, and I think they did that in both cases. At pick 44, Azuraku, I think I mispronounced that, whatever, but Donovan from Boston College, he's an exciting edge rusher. I wonder a little bit just like how well it projects to the next level in terms of how he won in college. That said, the thought of him and Micah Parsons getting after the quarterback is intriguing. He was a borderline first round talent. Cowboys get him at 44. And then Siobhan Ravel Jr., the corner from ECU, I thought, again, borderline first-round talent. Granted, he had the knee injury, certainly knocked him down some boards, but he has size, he has speed, cover skills, and at pick 76, you could do a whole hell of a lot worse than getting a guy with some first-round traits and characteristics. So for the Cowboys, just kind of sitting there and letting the board fall to them, I thought they did really, really well. And then there were some other teams that approached it a little differently, like the Pittsburgh Steelers. Traded their second round pick for DK Metcalf. So when you think about just in terms of the draft, you trade a second rounder for a legit 1,000+ yard receiver. That's a pretty good deal. And then in the third round, they get Caleb Johnson, the running back from Iowa, who just screams Pittsburgh Steeler running back, who I think is a slightly better version of Najee Harris, who they let leave via free agency, who they have previously years ago spent a first round pick on. I think Caleb Johnson is a year one starter and a good contributor for them. So to be able, with their offense, to get DK Metcalf, to get Caleb Johnson, thought was really good work. You could ask about, well, why didn't they draft Shedeur? More on that in a moment. The Las Vegas Raiders, they turned picks 37 and 143 into 48, 98, and 135. Then turned around and flipped 48 into 58 and 99. So they were very active in terms of moving around, getting additional draft pick capital. But then I also like what they got in terms of the players. Jack Besh, the wide receiver from TCU. Here's a guy you're talking about. You have Jacoby Myers. Obviously at tight end you have super stud Brock Bowers. But they needed more on the outside, and they've got it. So Geno gets another weapon in the passing game. And then Darian Porter. It's weird, right? They were even talking about during the draft last night. He's 24, but he's got, upside. Like, there's still untapped potential there. But with his size, speed combination, he is absolutely worth the flyer for a team that badly needed to address their secondary. And then at tail end of round three, Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant. I think both of them could be future offensive line starters, especially Charles Grant from William & Mary. I thought he was going to go a little earlier, like maybe late round two, early round three. So really good value for the Raiders there at the tail end of round three, day two. And just overall so far, a solid performance in this draft for the Las Vegas Raiders. And then I'll go with the New England Patriots. I'm going to give them props for this. They're actually building around their young quarterback. The anti-Bill Belichick draft approach, if you will. And they were a little flexible in terms of what they did. They turned pick 75 into 85 and 146, then turned 85 into 95 and a fourth round pick next year, so building up draft pick capital for next year. But then when you look at the players themselves, 3 picks is what they ended up with on day 2. All of them spent on offense. Travion Henderson gives them a dynamic, explosive threat out of the backfield that this team badly needed. They had to get somebody there, and they did. Fantastic. And then Kyle Williams, I think he's going to start for them at wide receiver pretty early on. Another guy with some speed, some big playability. And then Jared Wilson, the center from Georgia. You could have made an argument like, would he have been somebody the Patriots would have needed to take at the beginning of round 3 instead of at the end of round 3? Just the approach here of you've got your young quarterback, you've spent in free agency, now go put young pieces around your quarterback. Like, this is how it should be done. So I give major props to the Patriots for their draft approach so far this year. In terms of losers, I want to call out here for the draft that in terms of the teams, I don't really feel like pound the table rage about any of these being losers. It could be more like disagreement with approach, disagreement with the particular pick. So if you're a fan of one of these teams, don't get too pissy-pantsed about it, because none of them are the biggest losers of night 2 of the draft. I'm going to go with the Tennessee Titans first, because while I could say, yeah, like getting the edge rusher from UCLA and then getting Kevin Winston in round 3, on the surface, they feel like good players, like good picks in a bubble, right? But you draft Cam Ward at 1, that was the only real option you had. You had to do it. But then you don't do anything to build around him on day 2. Yeah, not cool in my opinion. Like, at least one of these picks needed to be on the offensive side of the ball. And if you want to say, well, defense was the bigger need, motherfucker, they had the number 1 overall pick for a reason. They sucked pretty much everywhere. And if you're going to build up your team, you prioritize the offense around your young quarterback that you just drafted number 1 overall, not your goddamn defense. That's all I'm going to say. The New Orleans Saints, it made sense to me that they were going to address quarterback and even in round 2. But that one, like, I don't get the Tyler Shuck love. He's going to be 26 in September. He has a big-ass injury history. For Christ's sakes, this guy used to be Justin Herbert's backup at Oregon. Holy fuck. Big injury history, accuracy issues, sometimes kind of scattered in the pocket. Like, you're looking at a guy, you see some projectable traits, I grant you, but to take him this high in round 2, are you fucking insane? He's going to be 26. How much more upside is there really? I'm sorry, but I saw, when I was scouting Shuck, I saw a 5th or 6th round talent when you factor in the age and the injury history. And even if he didn't have those things there, he felt more like a 3rd or 4th round talent. I'm just floored that you would take him there. It beats me. And then it felt like Broughton, the defensive tackle, was a bit of a reach. And they didn't address what I thought was a big need at corner. Just a weird day 2 for the Saints. The Indianapolis Colts, it's not even so much the players that they took. It's the approach, the strategy, right? No picks to address the offensive line that lost multiple starters in free agency. That's interesting. Wouldn't have been my choice. I'm just saying. But beyond question, the biggest loser on day 2 of the draft was Shadour Sanders. And unfortunately now all of us lose because it's going to lead to this nonstop discussion like it has the past 2 days, a debate about him and where he should have been drafted, why he's not being drafted, and all the connotations with that. Here's the bottom line. It wasn't unreasonable for him to be undrafted in round 1. He, in my eyes, was like a mid to late day 2 talent. So if anything, drafting him in round 1 with his lack of elite traits would have been a reach. And depending on how high you took him in round 1, a pretty sizable to stupid reach. So let's put that aside. He was not, full stop, he was not a first round talent. He just wasn't. There's just no way. When you go and you eliminate the name and the media and all the other attention, what do you see? You see a guy who at best could project to have like average NFL starter traits. You don't take those guys super high in the draft. You just don't. So in no way, shape, or form was it unreasonable for him to slide to day 2 of the draft. That felt appropriate. I even didn't think it was ridiculous when he didn't get drafted in round 2, although when you see the Saints draft somebody like a Tyler Shuck, who's going to be 26 in September with that huge-ass injury history, you start to go, huh. But the fact that he wasn't drafted at all on day 2, and somebody like Dylan fucking Gabriel was, are you fucking kidding me? We went from this situation where flat out, Shadour Sanders for the past couple of years has been vastly overrated by the NFL and draft media. Point blank, period. To that level of overrated, to now we've gotten to a place where he's being ridiculously underrated by the NFL and teams. I don't even give a shit what you want to say about what you perceive or think there might be in terms of character or off the field or lack of leadership, lack of accountability, ... Here's the reality, is that this is a guy that's a mid to late day 2 talent. But when you look at the position that he plays, the fact that he hasn't been drafted is fucking ridiculous. Now, I would expect him to be drafted in the first 10 to 15 picks of round 4. Somebody like the Raiders makes a ton of sense. I think the Dolphins make even more sense with the weapons they have on offense, to his injury history. Like, it could be really great for both parties. And now you're at a place with Shedeur. He has, at minimum, high-end backup upside and some actual starter upside. You could draft a guy like that in round 3 or round 4, and there is a significant financial benefit there for your team, if nothing else, because you're saying, hey, this is a guy that is a backup for the next 4 years. I could pay $1 to $2 million versus having to go in free agency and sign a veteran backup and have to pay him $5, $7, $8 million or more. Like, it buys you cap space and some upside in terms of development for that young backup. Like, you just fucking do it. Shedeur should have been a 3rd round pick. And he better be an early 4th round pick. Because if he's not, then NFL teams are being really stupid. And they're overthinking it. Because now you've gotten to a place where you don't have the pressure of bringing him as a starter. So he doesn't have a whole lot of leverage, nor does his dad. So if that's a concern, it should be no longer. And you can sit there and say, oh, you don't like it, we can just fucking cut you. But I promise you at this point, like, Shedeur is much more likely to have a 10-year career in the NFL, even if it's as a backup, than the vast majority of the guys that were taken in round 3 ahead of him will have a 5-year NFL career. I mean, at some point in time, teams got to stop overthinking this, and they got to stop the groupthink, and they got to stop being stupid. Now, part of this is this vicious cycle of, well, he's been projected in mock drafts because of media attention, et cetera, and spotlight for the past couple of years as being a high first-round pick. So it creates this false sense of belief in folks' minds that that's where he belonged, that's where he should have been taken, and it's just not true, right? So again, really overrated by the media and fans, underrated now by NFL teams. But every pick that he's not taken, he's losing money. So that makes him a loser. If he's not drafted until very, very late on Saturday, or even not at all, which that better not happen, then it is totally fair to criticize the NFL for just being stupid. Folks are going to interject other things about it's because of this, it's because of that. It's a lot of different factors, folks. So often in life, we try to make things binary. It's either 0 or 1, and that's just not how the world works. It just isn't. It just isn't. So, we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I think just in terms of the things that went down, when you see some of the other quarterbacks like Dylan fucking Gabriel over Shadour Sanders, are you fucking insane? That's where it's okay to start throwing the bullshit flag and say, come the fuck on.